Hello, everyone. Welcome to this fireside chat. I don't know what do we call this question and answer with the author Tyler P.T. Hylton, right
That's
here
you.
on. That's me. We're going to be talking about my novel Regulation 19. It's going to be all spoilers. It's going to be a great time. But I'm not the host here. We've got a great host with us. I'd like to introduce you to my good friend. His name is Pipes. How's it going, Pipes?
It's going fantastic, Mr. PT.
Sweet. Uh, Pipes and I hosted a guitar podcast called Six String Bliss for like 8 years, so we might just slide into some guitar talk here first. I don't know. You never know. Anything could happen.
Well,
But I,
it's awkward seeing you while doing this. Normally we're just talking over the air.
right, right.
And so I'm all like freaked out being able to see you.
It is different. It is definitely different. So before we get into the book talk, I do have to say you are officially the cooler person on this chat because you just got an awesome new tattoo, which brings your total to like what, 4 or something, 5? I
Something
don't
like
know.
that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5-ish.
Wow, you are much cooler than I am. So congratulations on your coolness.
Why, thank you.
No problem.
I'm just happy that I remembered that this was a video cast about 30 seconds before it started and was able to put on a shirt.
We can't really see too much of you from the neck down anyway, so
It's
you
all
would have
right.
been safe. So kind of the agenda here today is we are gonna talk about Regulation 19. A bunch of people submitted questions they had about it, and we're gonna answer them. And the idea here is that I always get a little annoyed that you can't really, like, authors when they talk about their books, they like talk about it in vague terms and talk about the premise, and they try to avoid spoilers at all costs. This is full on spoilers, so this is meant for people who have read the book. When this is done, I'm actually going to put a link at the back of the book to this, so people can watch it right after they finish if they want. And who knows, if we get a good response, maybe we'll do another one down the line, a few months. I don't know, but we'll see. But we got a good list of questions, I think, and I'm just going to turn it over to Pipes, and he can just throw them at me, pick whichever ones you want, and ask me, and feel free to follow up or whatever. And if you're watching live, feel free to post your questions in the question and answer section in this crazy Hangout thing as well. So, Pipes, I will turn it over to you.
All right. Well, I want to start this off a little bit basic with some of the easier questions. Don't want to throw you under the bus quite yet, but
Okay.
namely because I think there's a certain order to this, and I think it'd be awkward for somebody who has not read the book to come in and read about some strange, bizarre thing that you did on page 2,439.
Right. That must have been the large print edition.
Yeah. So at any rate, these first two questions both came from Steve C.
Okay.
The first one: did any particular book or film inspire your book?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Steve. Thank you. I think that it was a combination of things. One, I was watching. Have you seen Orange Is the New Black, Pipes?
I have not.
All right. Well, there's a show called Orange Is the New Black. It's about a women's prison, and that got me thinking about prison. And actually the idea for the book came from, I was thinking about prison, and I was thinking about how crazy it would be if you got out of prison and like the entire world was different than what it was when you went away. So my original idea for the book was that this dude gets out of prison, and he was going to escape from prison, and then he was going to find out that he was actually on an alien world and didn't know it. That was the original idea. So, and I actually started writing that. I wrote the first chapter of that. Maybe I should post that sometime. But so I was reading that, and then, man, my video's going in and out. Hey, I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
So I had that in my mind, and then I started reading the book In the Garden of Beasts by Eric Larson, which is a nonfiction book about the United States ambassador to Germany right before the start of World War II when Hitler was taking power. And that was a pretty chilling book. There's one crazy scene in it where the ambassador doesn't really know what's going on yet, but him and his family are out in a small town in Germany in kind of the rural area, and everyone's like, oh, it's super great that you came today. Oh, wait till you see what happens. This is a super exciting day. and they're like, "Whoa, is this going to be like some big celebration, some holiday we don't know about? What's going on here?" So that they like, "All right, come out in the street and line up. There's going to be a parade." And so they're like, "All right." So they go line up in the street and wait for the parade, and it turns out the parade is this tied up Jewish person who they're like throwing stones at and all this stuff like that. And so it's like this totally celebratory atmosphere, but this completely horrible thing going on. So that scene really affected me, and I think that was pretty important to the development. So kind of those two things coinciding, thinking about prison, watching Orange is the New Black, and then thinking about a town where things are not as they seem, I guess, where there's evil very little bit under the surface, from reading In the Garden of Beasts by Eric Larson.
Very nice. Now, I had the great pleasure of being able to kind of talk to you throughout your writing process.
Right.
So I've kind of had that behind the curtain view, even though at the time I didn't know what I didn't have the words, I didn't know what you were writing, but I knew the process you were undergoing. And one of the things that I always found really interesting to me is initially you did not know where this book was going. You didn't know the ending, you didn't know the turning point, you didn't know the climax. At what point did those really defining features of the book start forming in your head?
That's a good question. I'm not entirely sure, but like what I was saying about the alien world thing, that they were going to be on an alien world, I actually was thinking about that through probably like the first, basically until Zed shows up, which is like maybe a quarter of the way through the book. I thought they probably were still on like some crazy alien world, and it was going to be more of a science fiction thing. Mm-hmm. And the idea then was that you were going to find out later in the book that Frank and all the other convicts in the prison, none of them had actually committed crimes. They were people who had basically fought against the aliens or whatever, who had taken them to this world, and they'd had their memory wiped and made to think they committed crimes and put into this prison. So slowly it started to develop as it went, and I really think the story kind of told itself to me as I went, and I really didn't know where it was going. I didn't plot it out at all in advance. So I kept trying to throw myself little curveballs. Like my philosophy was that if I didn't know what was going to happen next, then the audience wouldn't either. So I would do stuff like there's the scene where Christine opens this freezer chest, and I was thinking to myself at that point, what's the craziest thing I could put in this freezer chest? And then I thought of a severed head, and I was like, yeah, that's perfect. And I had no idea what the severed head was or what it was going to be or anything like that. So I would throw myself those curveballs all the time, and I think that made it a cool book. The only downside of that really was that it kind of slowed down the writing process. When it got to the point where I'd have to think of, okay, well, what's the deal with this severed head? I know that Christine's not probably a mass murderer, so what's going on? I would have to take a few days to a week and really just stop writing and think about that. So I think it made for a good end product, but it was kind of slow going a lot of times. So I guess in answer to your question, I don't have a set time that it all came together really, I guess, but it slowly developed. And then also after I was done with the first draft, I sent the book out to some readers to give me their reaction, and Pipes was one of those, and did a great job. Yeah, and I think it was still coming together at that point. The version that you first read and the other people first read was still coming together at that point.
Yeah, and the basics are there, but it's a lot different than what we have here today. Certainly, especially towards the end there. So, from a pure writing perspective, and this again coming from Steve C., what are some lessons that you've learned for the next one that you write?
Good question. I can think of two big lessons, I guess. The first one is that, okay, so when I was writing the book, and I'm sure it's the same for all writers when they're writing longer pieces of work, but there's some days when it all just comes super easy, and you just feel like, oh my God, this is genius. This is great. I don't understand why I'm not a zillionaire already. This is total genius. And then there's other days, probably the majority of the days, that I'm like, oh my God, I cannot put down one more word. I must force myself. And you just really have to force yourself to keep slogging, and it just feels like it's terrible when you're writing it. You're like, oh, I just got to get through this, and I'll come back later and fix it, but I just got to get through it. And the lesson that I learned was that when I went back and read the first draft, I couldn't tell which of those, which were the parts that were easy to write and which were the hard parts to write. They all, at the time it was hard or easy, but at the end when you're going back to it, it's not like the easier parts were better or anything like that. So I guess the lesson was whether it feels good or not doesn't necessarily indicate whether it is good. So just keep pushing through those hard times, even if it doesn't feel like it's great. So that's one lesson. The other lesson, and this was interesting to me, Pipes, was that I guess I'm trying to think of how to say it. I guess audiences are more willing to put up with the weirdness than I thought they were. Like, there's the part where Frank goes into the away. There's basically a whole chapter where he's not talking to anyone. He's just by himself, and the way he's like eating the possibly living flesh of the unfeathered. It gets pretty weird there for a little bit. And I was a little worried about that section. I was like, are people going to think this is too weird, or is it going to turn people off? But I've had a number of people, and unlikely people that I wouldn't have thought, who aren't like big like science fiction readers or anything, tell me that that's their favorite section. So I was very impressed with the level of weirdness people are willing to do. So let your imaginations run wild, I guess.
That's interesting. Okay, I'm gonna start kind of walking down the path of the book a little bit, and
Yeah.
seems to we have a lot of questions around a couple of very basic things in the book. So first, before we get into that, tell me about the artifacts and how these all came to be in your head.
Yeah. So again, I knew that this is kind of weird, but so I knew it all comes back to that freezer chest, I guess. I knew that in that freezer chest I wanted Christine to have some illegal stuff, and I didn't know what that illegal stuff should be. So I just started thinking of random objects that would normally not be illegal, and so that's what I started thinking about. That's when I just started basically listing them. I don't remember what's all in there. First, the mirror, the cane, the various objects, and that was the start. Is I wanted people to wonder, like, what do all these objects have to do with each other? What do they have to do with anything? And in that first scene where we first see them, Christine's talking about, are these going to be enough to save the day or not? And I wanted the reader to say, oh, well, how could these possibly save the day? So I guess that's the way I usually kind of approach stuff, is to try to make it interesting to the reader and make the reader wonder first, and then figure out the logic of it later. So I don't know if that's a good way to do things or not, but that's where I went with it. So then I had the idea of Zed having one of these objects, and that was the pocket watch, and then the idea that he was the only one who really knew how to use these objects, but the others, they've succeeded in gathering a bunch of these objects, but they didn't really know how to use them. So it wasn't like there was a very logical approach to it. Again, it was one of those things where I just kind of discovered it as I went. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, one of the cool things I found to be in the book is that the artifacts always kind of surprised me at what their use was. It wasn't like, oh, pocket knife, that's surely going to be used for this, or the lighter is surely going to be used for this. It kind of took me by surprise, and at the same time, I think the cool factor of it is that realistically it took you by surprise, because you're writing, trying to figure out, great, I have these objects, now how do I use them?
Right.
Very cool. Now, the other questions that we see a lot about involve the locks, and I'll just start with a couple of these here. The first one actually kind of straight out, is the trick lock Craftsman a thing?
Good question. Yes, it is a thing. So it's not a common thing at all. It's not like and even in the world of the internet, when there's lots of uncommon things, this is like a pretty rare thing. But there's really kind of one guy that I was really inspired by. His name is Rain Pop, P-O-P-P. He's a German dude, and he basically does what Frank does. He builds. He only does padlock style locks, but he has like 10 different different models that he has, and it's pretty cool. If you go to his website, you can see him, and he doesn't tell you the trick to them, but he's like, yeah, this lock takes 8 steps to open, impossible without a manual, or like this lock, takes 5 steps, no key required, and they're really cool looking. He's really into like 19th century locks, and that's what he bases a lot of his stuff on is that kind of thing. The other thing that surprised me about it, and what made me think that yeah, maybe Frank could actually make a living off this, is that guy's locks are like $350 a piece, I think. So so yeah, so it is a thing. It's not like a common thing, but it's a thing.
All right, and kind of on the same note, what chose you to choose key making as his main skill?
Gotcha. Oh, by the way, visit if you want to check that guy out. His website is poplocks.com. Popp locks. All right, getting back to the question. I think, well, first of all, I knew enough of Frank at that point to know that he wouldn't be a very good employee. He'd basically be a completely terrible employee. He'd probably get pissed off at his boss and not be able to hold down a job very well. So I knew he had to be in business for himself. So I wanted to do something that was he could be self-employed. He could be a craftsman. I felt like he was a guy who would work with his hands. I thought about doing some kind of like having him have some kind of brewery, like local brewery kind of thing, but then I realized I would have to research a lot about how breweries work, and I didn't want to do that. So I can't. I guess the main reason, though, from a more thematic approach, the main reason for the whole thing is that I like the kind of the irony and the unexpectedness of here's this guy who's like basically one of the master lock builders, and he's been locked away in prison for so many years, and there's a couple other things around that, like he's a guy who really locks away his emotions. He doesn't trust anyone. He keeps his trust locked away as well. So I guess there's some kind of metaphorical aspects to it as well. Plus, locks are cool, right?
Absolutely. So how much research did you actually have to do into lock making and lock picking and assorted lock related elements in writing this book?
Not a ton. I like honestly that Poplocks website. I was so happy when I found that, just because I knew then I realized this was a real thing, and I could kind of look at what he was doing as kind of an inspiration. And there were a couple. I think there's one called Dan Locks too, DANN. So I researched those guys who were doing that, and then I did research a little bit about like basic lock mechanics, so I could hopefully use the right terms and stuff like that when I was referring to things. But beyond that, I didn't do too much. It was more easing my mind that this was something that was actually possible to do. And once I understood that, then I was free to get a little creative with it.
Nice. All right, and final on kind of the lock and artifact side of the world, why was the empty box so important? Was it an artifact, or was it just a prop for something else?
Good question. No, so the empty box that Zed uses to keep the unfeathered away, that's not an artifact. That's something that Zed built. He again, part of the effect of it was supposed to be. I just like the idea of there's this box that you kind of think maybe this is going to have all the answers to the mysteries, and this box is going to really solve everything if they just open it. And then Frank opens it, and oh, it's empty. So I like that moment. But again, kind of on a metaphorical level, Zed is very ornate on the outside, and like the box, it looks like there's something really interesting inside of it. But when you open up the box, you see there's nothing, and that's kind of my metaphorical view of Zed as well. He's got all these powers. He's a really charismatic dude, but on the inside, he's an empty, evil thing. So I think we'll learn more in the next book about what the deal is with why he used that empty box, and the way he uses his powers. It does all kind of fit into how his powers work, but I think it works on that metaphorical level as well.
Well, speaking of Zed, and I know you alluded to this a little bit in the second book, but any clues to what Zed really is? Is he a demon, a vampire, a Highlander?
I was gonna make up a highlighter, but then I realized I would be sued. No, yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't want to give away the farm or anything, but uh, because it'll be more fun to read it. But I think we can take a few clues from the text from the book itself. So I think there's kind of two clues in the book to what Zed is. The biggest one really is when Frank's talking to the Unfeathered, and he asks about Zed and the Unfeathered, or not the Unfeathered, I'm sorry, the Ones Who Sing, when he's talking to the Ones Who Sing about Zed, and he brings up Zed, and the Ones Who Sing call him the boy who found the watch, and then they kind of correct themselves and say it was the watch who found the boy. So from that we kind of can get the idea that he was a boy of some sort, maybe not a human boy, but he was a boy, and he has had that pocket watch with the broken clock symbol on it since he was a young boy. So we got that clue, and then the other big clue I think is just the way he appears in town. That when he first appears, he's just naked. He's kind of the way he acts is pretty inhuman. He doesn't really know how to act and how to talk to people. The first time he talks to Frank out at the cabin, when he's kind of just doing the door-to-doors through town, he's very awkward and formal and doesn't really know how to speak to people. But then in just a few short years, he becomes super charismatic and great at talking and great at playing people's emotions. So without actually revealing too much about him and what he is, I think we have those couple clues to go by, but we'll learn a little more in book 2, and then in book 3 we'll get really, that's when all the big answers about Zed come.
Awesome. Well, let's take the focus away from Zed a little bit, and let's go to his right-hand men, if you will, the selectmen. So, what happens to them? They lost their powers, and I'm pretty sure the vengeance would be pretty high on their priority lists. So, where do they go from here?
That's a good question that I'm not going to answer. No,
Awesome.
I will tell you that gets answered like on essentially page 1 of book 2. You'll learn some stuff about that. But without giving away too much, I mean, I think that Rook Mountain at the end of this book is going to be a town divided, right? I think there'll probably be some people who are really, really pissed about what happened, and some people who kind of miss the days of Zed. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I agree with you, question asker. I'd be pissed at the selectmen as well. Although I'm curious, he said former selectmen, right?
Yes.
I mean, if they're legally elected, maybe they would still be the selectmen. I don't know.
Ooh, good point. Good point.
Yes.
All right, so now we're going to get a little in depth here. So,
Okay.
on page 210 in the paperback edition,
I got to break out the.
There is a Twilight Zone quote. What episode is that from?
Good question. Wow, this is a good question, and this is a little bit of an Easter egg that I was hoping people would be curious about. So I'm glad someone asked about that. So that is from the episode "The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street," and it's one of my favorite episodes. If you haven't seen it, I'm about to spoil a 50-year-old episode of the Twilight Zone. So sorry, 60-year-old probably. But so essentially, there's this street, Maple Street, and the power goes out, and these strange things start happening. And there's a boy in that street who has a comic book where very similar things are happening. And the boy says, "Hey, in this comic book, it turns out one of the people on the street is an alien who's there to cause trouble." So basically, the town kind of the street kind of turns on each other. They're all trying to figure out who's the alien, and it ends eventually. Some violence ensues, but the very end is pretty cool. They kind of pull back, and you show on this hill there's some actual aliens sitting up on the hill watching, and they say something along the lines of all right, we've done our research and we've determined like the best weapon to use against humans is each other. So that idea really was, I think, pretty central to this book, and the idea that Zed, he did a lot of work at the beginning. He took the town out of time. That's a big deal, and he saved them from the Unfeathered. But once he had the regulations in place, everything kind of took care of itself. The other townspeople enforced the laws. Some of them enforced them very happily. So it was kind of like once he set the wheels in motion, he didn't have to do anything. So that's kind of taken right from that episode, that idea that using people against each other is sometimes the most effective method.
Awesome.
Yeah. Hey, look, can I ask you a question, Pipes? Can you see the question and answer section or not?
No.
All right. Well,
I'll click on my screen, and I don't want to lose you, so I can't.
No worries. It popped up on the side of my screen, I think, because I'm the host here, so I should have planned that better. But can I jump to a question in the live chat here quick?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. So Breege asks 2 writing questions. Which editor was used, and which font was used for write? Wow, that's specific.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the editor I used, her name is Kirsten, and I actually met her through a friend of a friend, and she's a great editor. She's a stay-at-home mom who has formerly worked in the publishing world, and she gave me a great price, and she did a great job on my book. So huge thanks to her. The book would not be what it is without her. The font was whatever the what?
Or are we speaking editor as in program? Like your text editor.
That could very well be.
I think you should answer both ways.
All right. Well, the text editor I used was Google Docs. I wrote the whole book in Google Docs. So the font that I used was whatever the Google Docs default is. I think it's Arial, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not positive. Google Docs. Let me look.
So I like writing in Google Docs because then it's available to me everywhere. It's in the cloud, and I like that aspect of it. And then he also asked, which music did you listen to during writing? And that is a great question I can answer really fast. Go to pthylton.com and look in the sidebar, and you'll see the Regulation 19 playlist, so you can listen to the very music that I listen to while writing. Thank you for those questions.
Awesome. All right, are we back to my questions here?
Back to
awesome.
Pipes.
All right, let me see where we're at. I'm gonna throw this one at you. Is Rook Mountain based on a real-life specific town?
Yes, it is. As you know, Pipes.
I do.
So the town is based on is called Roan Mountain, Tennessee. And in the first draft, I think the first draft that you read, Pipes, it was actually called Roan Mountain.
Yeah. The original one you sent me was Roan Mountain.
Okay. So Roan Mountain is so the stuff that's real about Roan Mountain basically is that it is in the mountains and it is by some grassy balds, which that's described in chapter 1 of the book as kind of like there's these mountains that don't have any trees growing near the peak, and no one knows why because they're below the tree line. There's lots of different theories to why trees don't grow on them, but no one really knows. So that's a real thing that really is in Roan Mountain, and it's my favorite place on earth, really, I'd say. Going up to that mountain, and you just have a beautiful 365-degree view. 360? I don't know what 365-degree view means. I think that means you only have a 5% view. But you have a 360-degree view. It's like the beginning of The Sound of Music up there. It's really beautiful, where you can just spin around. I like to spin around and sing, and wear my blue dress. But you can just see for miles, and it really is beautiful. So that's all real. That really is a town, Roan Mountain. I debated a lot on whether to call it Roan Mountain, and the reasons for it were, it's a real place. I thought it would be cool. I think Roan Mountain has like kind of a tough sound to it. Like you'd think the people who live in Roan Mountain would be like real hardy folk or something. So I eventually decided to change it though, because the town is really, really small, even smaller than the fictional Rook Mountain, and I feel like the town doesn't come off very well in the book. There's lots of jerks in the town, and I didn't want to offend the real Roan Mountainers. So that's why.
I'm totally behind you changing the name, only because when I was reading it, being that it was still Roan Mountain, I think the first thing I was doing was actually looking up Roan Mountain, and then as there's a few parts in the book where you describe like traveling from one place or another, and the turns that are taken and roads, and I'm like, where are these roads? I'm not seeing this. Where's the grocery store?
Right.
That doesn't sound like the grocery store in Round Mountain. So I think it would have been a little frustrating if you didn't have that direct carryover of kind of the landmarks of the real Round Mountain.
Right. No, that's good. That's a good point. And I did keep all the surrounding towns the same. So Elizabethton is real, and
Mm-hmm.
the highway they used to get there is real. But yeah, I think it worked to change it. And by the way, me and Pipes are talking about running a race
That's right.
in Round Mountain, a 10K this year. So I think it'd be cool if we ran, and maybe I don't know, maybe we could even get some other readers to run, and we could all wear like Regulation 19 shirts. Everybody'd be like, who are these? Who are these weirdos? What's going on?
I'm out. I'm all for it. Let's get everybody out there. Awesome. All right. Let's jump. Let's get a little deep here.
Okay.
All right. So, in this tale, you speak about education and societal norms, pressure, and control. Will we see similar ideas in the coming books, or will you be attacking other areas?
So that's a really good question. And that's something that I'm kind of debating a little bit right now, as far as like, when you have a series, there's going to be certain motifs that repeat throughout the series. And as I'm working on book 2, I'm kind of still figuring out what those are. But I think the part that I'm more interested in, as opposed to like society as a whole, is how society affects the individual. So I'm not that interested in like a town that's evil, but what I'm interested in is, what if a guy who is, just suddenly thrown into a town that used to be his cool hometown, and now it's evil. So I'm more interested in the personal aspect. So yes, we will see some in book 2. There's a kind of a reoccurring theme of that, of the pressures of society. But again, I want to try to make the focus of that the individual, and the way that the individual reacts to it. Because I'm not that interested in seeing a big event, but I'm interested in seeing how like a real well-drawn character reacts when they're thrown into some crazy event. So I guess the short answer, I could have just said yes. We will see those repeating. Yes.
The short answer would have been any fun. Come on.
Yeah.
All right. Now, this is the long question. I've been putting this one off just because I have to read it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious on your thoughts on Will. I understand that his killing of the hiker gal was important to the story. It was a way of describing the entire situation in Rook Mountain in one ghastly stroke. But it's hard not to be hard on Will. I guess if you didn't have a low point there would be no room for growth and the awakening of Will and Christine when they finally decide to take action. There is a depth and moral conflict in the human condition, and real people sometimes behave in ways that surprise themselves as much as they surprise observers. Am I on to something, or am I overthinking this?
Good question. Well, first, you're definitely overthinking it, but to get more serious, so I think the question really is how are we supposed to feel about Will? Because he's essentially a cold-blooded killer, but throughout the book, he's kind of supposed to be one of the heroes too. So interesting question, and this was a hotly debated issue amongst my first readers, the people who read that first draft, and so
except
Pipes,
me for some reason.
yeah. So Pipes, I'm kind of curious about Pipes, because I think you might have been the only one who didn't essentially have a problem with Will killing that girl. Do you have any thoughts on how you felt about that situation?
I don't know. Again, the original readers except me all seem to kind of take a little bit of an issue with that. I think it set up things very nicely, kind of like Mike said in the question. I think it definitely provided a really good glimpse of what things were going on, and that's really how I took it when I read it. There was this genuine kind of shock at him killing, and you kind of felt that's not what he wanted to do, and that's not really necessarily who he was. But I thought it came across very well myself. I was actually had more interest in the backstory of the girl that was hiking and got shot.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, remind me to come back to that in a second, that backstory
Right.
part. But so yeah, so I think that some of my early readers thought that so they were sending me feedback chapter by chapter, and they kind of really thought that Will was going to be a bad guy after that, uh, which obviously wasn't necessarily the intention. But I really do feel like I relate to Will more than any of the other characters, and the reason why I think is that like I often wonder, like I've never been obviously in a situation where there's like extreme tyranny, but I often wonder, would I be brave enough to stand up to it or not? And I think Will is at heart, he's a good guy, but he's the kind of guy who's going to look for excuses not to rock the boat. Like he in his heart he wants to take action against Zed, but he's kind of looking for excuses not to. So he wants to protect his family, and he wants to protect the coin, the evil coin. So that's why he doesn't take action. But really, I mean, Will's fatal flaw, I think, is just that he's a little bit of a coward, and he's willing to make excuses so that he doesn't have to take action. But I think, like, I don't know, Pipes, have you ever heard about that? I don't. I've heard about it a few times. There's that legend, and who knows if it's even true. But if you put a frog into water and then slowly turn up the heat, it'll just sit there and it won't jump out of the water even when the water becomes boiling and it kills it. If you turn it up slowly enough, it won't notice the slowly increasing water. But of course, if you throw a frog into boiling water, it instantly is going to hop out of there. So that was kind of what I was trying to illustrate with Will and Frank, the idea that Will had he'd been there the whole time. He'd slowly seen all the changes in Rook Mountain and everything that Zed has done, so he's a little more willing to accept it, whereas Frank is kind of the frog that you just throw right into the boiling water. He just came into this town and was like, what the heck's going on? So I don't know that Frank is necessarily better than Will, but he has the perspective to see it all at once, and probably to see the situation a little more clearly and to take action. So that's my thought. And again, I think that that's a question I often struggle with, is if I was in that situation, what would I do? And yeah, I don't know.
Well, before we get back to the hiker gal, I want to keep on Will for a little bit, because I think Will's one of the more interesting characters in the book. He's not Frank. He's not your lead role. But Will's actually a character that I had a lot of issues with.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you kind of see yourself as Will, but I didn't like him. And I think a lot of it drew to the entire relationship between Will and Christine, especially with Jake being out of the picture, or not really. And I struggled with that. So,
Sure.
What were your thoughts on that? And I think we've had this conversation before. But.
Yeah, probably so. So, and I totally understand your struggles with it because of the way it's presented. But I think basically my thought on it was, so you have these two people, Will and Christine. They're basically they can only trust each other. They can't trust anyone else, and they're in this really, really intense situation for a matter of like 7 years. They can really only trust each other. They can only talk to each other. They're in an intense situation. Plus, on top of that, it has social benefits for them to hook up, because that'll make it look like that Christine is past her quote unquote terrorist husband. So that I guess that was my thinking, was that in real life that is probably something that would happen.
Yes. And I can totally see that. I am hoping myself that somewhere in the second or third in the series, that there is like a moment where there's Will, there's Christine, and there's Jake, and we got to figure out what's going to happen.
Nice. That chapter will be titled "Awkward Moment."
Yes.
The awkward moment.
Because that's what I'm really looking for.
All right, we got a question a live question in the chat from Matt J. He says, "Haven't read the book yet. Sell me on buying a copy, even though he will anyway. What makes this book different from other suspense books?" So I'm going to pass the buck to Pipes. What do you say,
Oh,
Pipes? Can you sell about it?
uh,
I'll take
well,
my shot
for
after.
one, it's written by PT.
Go. There
Enough
you go.
said. No, from PT, not knowing PT, I'm gonna pretend I never met you, and um, just purely from my reading of the book, um, it, it was a easy read, but it kept me completely engaged from the very beginning to the very end. We talked a little bit about chapter one and then the murder, and it was always a setup. You could feel that there was a setup. Everything was setting the stage. It was constantly setting the stage in all these different directions. But the cool thing about the book is that you never had a clue how this was going to unfold. And we talked a little bit about the artifacts, and I think that's a great example of how you yourself didn't necessarily know how these tools were all going to work and how they were going to be used. As a reader, there's a lot of books you read, whether it's the main plot or just a little subplot or something, you tend to have an idea of where things are going, and sometimes they surprise you a little. This one, I think, when you look back at it, it makes perfect sense and you can follow that story, but when you're reading it, you have no clue what that next page is going to bring.
Nice. I like it. That was good. How much am I paying you for this, by the way?
Not enough.
That was well done. Good job. All right, let me take my shot here, Matt J. So everything Pipe said, plus, imagine you go back to your hometown after a long time away, and you're so excited to go that you're going to see your old friends, you're going to see your old buddies. It's going to be great. And suddenly, everyone is a total jerk to you. Everyone seems completely different than they were before. People are shooting each other. You don't know why. You don't know what's going on. Uh, there's fights going on. Someone new is living in your house that you own, and you can't get them out. The police won't help you. You have no idea what's going on. It would drive you mad. You'd have no idea what to do. You'd be like, what is happening right now? This book is the story of that. And also, you get to be the hero. So there you go. That's my 20-second pitch.
Awesome.
Cool. Hey, let me get back to that, the background of the hiker chick.
The hiker gal.
Yeah, so here's what I want to do at some point. So I got to figure out the best way to do this, but I want to take a vote amongst the readers to see which they would rather have. So I'm going to write a story, a shorter story, probably like a 30, 40-page story. It's going to be either the background of the hiker chick and how she came to be in possession of that key, and kind of her whole backstory, how she ended up on the mountain, or it's going to be kind of a buddy adventure of the two recipes that Trevor goes out with towards the end of the book. I want to show some of their crazy adventures. So like kind of a buddy comedy, adventure comedy of them going on different adventures. So the two possible stories, and I might do both, but I'd like to hear from the readers to see which ones you would like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to somehow take a vote on that, and then I'm going to send out that story for free to people who are on my mailing list. So if you're not on my mailing list, go sign up for that on pthylton.com.
Am I on your mailing list?
I don't know. That's a good question. You better check yourself on that one. Yep.
Awesome. All right.
Cool.
So, a couple more kind of softball questions for you here.
Ooh, nice. Barbara Walters up in here.
So you mentioned earlier on when we were talking about the Twilight Zone quote about kind of being a little Easter egg. Understanding that we can't give out all the Easter eggs because then they won't be Easter eggs.
Sure.
Are there more Easter eggs out there than that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different references to one that I'll give you right here. That's there's a band that's referred to a couple times throughout the book called Strange Brood. I think it talks about how Will went to their concert. And
yeah.
Another part, maybe somebody's listening to them, but that is a band who's in another book that I'm writing called Sharp Notes. So you'll see about them. I guess it's not really an Easter egg you can figure out because that book's not out yet, right? But yeah, there are a lot of other references to different pop cultural stuff, and a lot of it is just when you're writing, for a couple hours a day, you throw in that kind of stuff just to entertain yourself. There's a lot of personal Easter eggs too. Like for instance, my one of my college roommates, we all called the new guy, or the
Yep.
Noog for short. And he makes his appearance. Pipes inspired a few of them. Pipes is known for answering the door in his boxers. I think I have two different people in the book answer the door in their boxers. So yeah, there's a few things like that going on in the book.
Yeah, that was definitely one of those moments where I'm like, oh, that's me.
I'm in the book. This is great.
So is there any direct correlation to characters and people that you know in real life? Or is it all bits and pieces all kind of pieced together?
No, I think it's all bits and pieces. I mean, there are definitely parts of. I would say that you inspired parts of Frank. I think I inspired parts of Frank. It's all mishmashed together, though. No direct correlation.
Let's see.
Yes.
All right. So where do we go from here?
Good question. So I'm working on book 2, A Place Without Shadows. I'm about 29, I think, percent done as of today. So I'm almost in mid-June, end of June, I'll finish the first draft of that, and then again I'll send it out to some readers to give me some feedback. So if anybody out there wants to be one of those readers, shoot me an email at pt@pthylton.com, and I'll see what I can do. Unless, as long as you don't mind a lot of spelling errors and stuff like that are in the early versions, you can have an early look at it. So I'm really excited for that book. I think I'm going to get a little blue with my language here for a second, but this is book 2, and book 2 or like movie 2 in a trilogy is normally the best one, right? So you got like Empire Strikes Back is the best one. You got like The Two Towers, Lord of the Rings is the best one. So I did put up a sign in my where I do my writing that says, "This is your empire. Don't fuck it up." So I look at that every day while I write. So I'm trying really hard to make this one pay off, and I think it is going to. This one, to give a little background on the story of this one, this was actually a story idea I thought of when I was in college, completely unrelated to the Regulation 19 idea, and I actually submitted this as a comic book idea to DC's like Vertigo line, which is like their adult line. And then I was like partway through Regulation 19 when I realized where Jake really was and how it tied it into this other story idea I'd been thinking about for years and years. So
Nice.
Pretty excited to get this going.
So is it different writing book 2? Only because, we talked a lot in the beginning about how, a lot of the story, a lot of the plot didn't develop until you wrote it. So now going into the sequel, obviously there's a lot of these stepping stones that are already there. Is it different writing in that aspect?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot harder in book 3 I don't know if the book's if the series is gonna end with 3 books. That's why I called it a series instead of a trilogy. But I do intend to wrap up, most of the questions that were answered in book 1 and book 3 by book 3. So I think that'll be the hard one because I won't be able to keep throwing in crazy new questions. I'll have to be answering them. But book 2, yeah, it's a little bit different. I am plotting this one out more. So I did actually write out a little bit of an outline for this one, just so I know where it's going, and that's actually helped me write a lot faster. So I think on the first book I was averaging something like 1,100 words a day. On this book so far, the last couple of weeks I'm doing 2,000 words a day. So I'm writing a lot faster because of that outline. So yeah, it is different, but again, I am asking lots of new questions, and there are new characters, and when you read the first 30, 40 pages of this book, you'll be thinking to yourself, who are these people? Where's Frank? What's going on? I do not remember these people, because there's basically a whole new group of people that we meet in this book. So I'm very excited for people to read it, though. Hey, we got another quick question here in the live chat that is, when can HBO approach you? HBO can approach me anytime. I'm ready.
I think that
I'm
was
ready.
HBO approaching you.
Yes, if you in fact work for HBO, pt@pthylton.com.
All right.
That would be great. Good question.
I do have to jump back into the questions because I totally forgot to do the follow-up question. Back
Oh
when
yeah,
we were
okay.
talking about Rook Mountain being based on a real town, um, the name Rook itself, is that a bird reference or does it signify the town is being used as a playing piece in a cosmic game of chess? What was your
That's
inspiration there?
good question. So when I decided not to really use Roan Mountain as the name of the town, I went and started going through lists of mountain names in Tennessee, and I was trying to find a cool name, and I couldn't find any names that were cool enough for me. So I looked at North Carolina, I looked at all over the place, and the way I actually stumbled upon Rook Mountain was there is a Rook Mountain in Alaska. I was just looking at all the names of lists of mountains I could come to, and that I thought was pretty cool. So once I saw it, though, I did start thinking about because remember the first draft had already been written by this point, so I did think it was pretty cool the way that it related to the unfeathered, the birds, the rook aspect, and then also the like you just said, the idea that the town is a chess piece that's kind of on this cosmic game, and I do like the idea too that rooks are really powerful at the end of the game, but you have to clear a lot of pieces off the board before they can be used to their full potential, and I feel like that's kind of what Zed did, is he cleared pieces off the board and taking Rook Mountain out of time. So
Very cool.
so both, I guess, is the answer. Oh, we do have
Oh,
another question in the chat, or do you have a follow up on that?
no, I'm good there.
All right. So Matt says, last question. A big studio picks up your book and wants to make it into the movie. Who directs it, and what movie would you like to mold it most to look like by comparison? Ooh, that's a good question. I think that David Fincher would direct it, and I would like kind of a gritty vibe to it, kind of I guess a Fincher vibe. That's why I picked Fincher. But I would like kind of a Zodiac, kind of a grimy, almost like a '70s kind of movie vibe to it.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very nice.
I'm glad he didn't ask who would play like the characters, because I thought about that a lot, and I just can't do it. I can't think of anyone. But yeah, Fincher
No,
would direct. Good
you don't have
question. Thank you.
you don't have any character in mind.
Nope,
You can't think of any.
I cannot think of anyone.
Wow.
Matthew McConaughey would probably be in it as someone. I don't know who though. He'd probably be Sean the cop. That's all I got.
Curse Sean the cop.
I hope you like Sean the cop, because he's coming
No,
back in
no,
book two in a
I
big
didn't
way.
mind Sean the cop.
Nice.
It's just Will. I just kind of wanted to beat up.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. So, Pipes, thank you for hosting here with us.
I
Um,
think it's been great.
Yeah. Oh, we do have another question in the chat. This has been distracting me throughout the entire interview. Which poster is that behind you? The Chabon one. So that is. Let me see if I can.
Oh, they're looking at you. I don't have a poster
Let's see
behind
if I
me.
can get you going here. So that is a Michael. Oh, great! My video went out. That was a. Michael Chabon is one of my favorite writers. He's the author of The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, among many others. But one time I got to meet him in Minnesota. I went to a talk he did, and that was like the poster that was the ad, or like the flyer that they had up, advertising the event. So I got a hold of one of those at the end, and got him to sign it for me. My favorite memory, though, from that event was when I brought my copy of The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay up to him, and it was just beat to hell, and it had coffee all over stains on it. And so I've read the book a few times, and I just beat it up, and I like apologized to him. I was like, "Oh man, I'm really sorry that the book looks like this." And he was like, "Dude, what are you apologizing for? That's like what a writer wants to see. They want to see that you've read the book a lot. They would." The frustrating thing is when someone brings up a book that's, you could tell has never been read, the spine's not correct. So that was a cool memory of meeting him. He's one of my heroes. So thank you for that question. So Pipes, this has been great. Thank you again.
So,
Do you
go
ahead?
ahead.
I was just going to ask if you have anything that you want to promote. We should say too that Pipes if you like the cover of Regulation 19, Pipes is the man to give the credit for right there. He's the
That's right.
cover designer. Are you taking on any new cover work right now?
I will take on whatever cover work, but I will only do cover work with somebody like PT himself who is willing to work with me. Because
Nice.
I did not make it easy to do cover.
No,
And
you're
in fact,
good.
we talked a little bit about Road Mountain, and one of the things that I was like very steadfast about is that we use a photo of Road Mountain.
Right, right.
So, yeah, little things like that. But I just had fun with it. I'm here to help PT. I believe in the book. I've read it. I love it, and want to do anything I can to help them out. But if you'd like my help too, let's talk.
Cool. How do they get a hold of you?
You can get a hold of me at pipes5780@gmail.com.
Cool. Awesome.
Uh,
Someone said in the chat that they're going to drop coffee on their Kindle edition of Regulation 19. Great comment.
Before we do turn this off, I think we need to do a little shameless self-promotion. I think we've heard a lot of great things about Regulation 19, but give us the elevator speech. Where do you get it? How do you find out about the new ones coming out? Let us
Yeah,
know.
totally. First of all, if you've read Regulation 19 already, or if you haven't, I don't care. I actually just today made the Kindle version 99 cents, and it's going to be 99 cents for the next week. So if you want to pick it up, if you haven't read it yet, now's a great time. Or if you have read it and you want to gift it to a friend. Did you know you can gift books on Amazon? If you already bought it, there's a little button that says gift this book. You can give it to all your friends. So that would be great.
Really?
Yeah, that's right. So that's the book itself. As far as the next book, if you want to be on the cutting edge of when the next book is coming out, head over to pthylton.com and you got to scroll down a little bit, but there's a link that says join the mailing list and sign up for that. And like I said, I'm going to be doing a short story that's exclusive for the mailing list people. Not till July, but I'll be doing it then. And then you'll also be the very first to know when the new book comes out, and I'll probably even do a special discount or offer or something for people on the mailing list. So that's the best way to keep up on what's going on in the world of PT.
All right. And the final question I got for you, probably most important, and partially too because I don't see you all the time. We just talk.
Right.
Even with your little videos, I don't necessarily watch them. No offense, I just listen to them. So, PT and the beard. Now, is this by any chance a official Blackhawks playoff beard?
No, my wife is pretty funny. Like, I've had this beard for a while now, and just the other day in the mail, we happened to get a razor, like, sent to us, and I was like, okay, honey, is this like a hint or whatever? Like, someone just happened to send us a razor in the mail. But no, I'm liking the beard. I think I'm gonna. I mean, I don't want to say forever, but I think I might stick with the beard for a long time.
All right, but at least say it's a Blackhawks playoff beard. So
all right, it's definitely a Blackhawks playoff.
All right,
definitely a Blackhawks playoff beard.
Excellent. That's all I got for you.
All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, Pipes, and thank you everyone for watching, whether you're watching live or later. Thanks for supporting my work and for answering questions. Hey, I'm gonna actually under this video, I'm gonna leave a link, a contact form up the video on the website that lets you ask your own question, and I'll keep collecting questions, and maybe a couple months down the line, if Pipes is a game, we can if we get enough questions, we can do this again prior to the release of the next book, A Place Without Shadows. And I think this should be a tradition after each book comes out to do a little one of these.
I'll even come out of the basement and put a poster behind me.
Whoa, let's not get crazy, Pipes. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. That'll do it for tonight, and we will talk to you next time.
Awesome.